Rawteur. A California woman, Lisa Reingold, is the main plaintiff in a class action lawsuit against Amazon.com for unfair competition, false advertising, and the Consumer Legal Remedies Act. Being that this is a class action case, we know the damages amounts to over $5 million, but as more plaintiffs are added, the damages will increase and we'll get a better idea of exactly how much damages Amazon.com and Prime Video are facing. Now, as I always do, I went online and I pulled her complaint. Now, according to Reingold, she looked at the word buy, looked at her so-called digital library, and said enough. She's suing Amazon for misleading millions of people, millions of Prime Video customers, into believing they own their purchases when in reality, they're just renting long-term with no guarantee of permanence. At the end of this video, I'll tell you just how you can join this case as a plaintiff if you choose to do so. However, from my understanding, in most class action cases, you don't need to do anything. Anyone who fits the class definition is automatically in unless they opt out later. Okay, so Reingold's complaint starts with the California Digital Property Rights Transparency Law. It's a mouthful, I know, but hear me out. This law, which went into effect this past January 1st, 2025, was written precisely to stop this kind of bait and switch, right? It says you can't advertise a digital good as buy or purchase unless you either, one, get the buyer to affirmatively acknowledge they're only receiving a license with clear restrictions and the possibility of revocation, or two, provide a clear, conspicuous disclosure that buying means licensing. Now, Amazon, according to the complaint, does neither. Instead, they slap buy on a button, show you add to cart, and let you feel like you're owning something real. But buried in their terms of use, the truth comes out. All you actually have is a non-exclusive, non-transferable, non-sublicensable limited license that exists entirely at Amazon's discretion. The lawsuit calls out Amazon's entire storefront design, specifically the buy button and the Your Library tab. Reingold claims that the language makes you feel like you're collecting movies, just like you would collect DVDs on a shelf, except here's the trick. Nothing in that library actually belongs to you, right? Amazon can revoke access, studios can pull rights, and one day that expensive collection of blockbusters that you proudly bought could just disappear. And it's not a hypothetical. People have already watched purchased titles vanish when licensing deals expired without a refund or warning. Just a ghost file where the movie used to be. Now, here's where her complaint gets really interesting. Clap that like button. It helps me boost this video and it guarantees future updates hit your homepage before anyone else. In my TV shows are worse now video from back in July, I told you all that these kind of lawsuits would start popping up after the whole Stop Killing Games movement went viral. Well, the California legislature passed this law specifically because they were watching the Stop Killing Games movement unfold. Remember when Ubisoft killed the game The Crew? Millions of players lost the game they had paid full price for because Ubisoft delisted it and shut down the servers. That outrage snowballed into the Stop Killing Games campaign, which pushed lawmakers to protect consumers from having digital goods destroyed by the very companies that sold them in the first place. Therefore, California lawmakers spelled it out simply. As companies move away from discs and towards digital sales, consumers deserve to know the truth that most digital purchases aren't ownership. They're licenses that can vanish at any time. End quote. So they wrote this law requiring plain language disclosure. Bigger font, clear text, no hiding behind walls of fine print. And Reingold's case is the first big shot at enforcing it. Therefore, this isn't an abstract consumer rights theory. Reingold names her own purchase, Bella and the Bulldogs, Volume 4, which she bought on Amazon for $17.79 in May of 2025. She walked through the same purchase flow as millions of us. She saw the buy button. She added it to her library. She assumed she was paying for permanent access. The complaint also lays out an example that cuts right through the jargon. If you buy the director's cut of Django Unchained on DVD, you own it. Pull it down 5 years later and it'll play. But if you buy that same director's cut on Prime Video, Amazon could swap it for the theatrical cut, or an AI revised version, or erase it entirely if they lose the license. I have to push back a little bit on the DVD thing because some DVDs do come with DRM, which is digital rights management, and depending on how that's coded onto the disc could actually stop playing after a few years, or it might need to be able to connect to the internet to verify that this isn't a fake copy. The same licensing issue could happen with a DVD, right? So it's not just digital sales, it could happen with physicals as well. And speaking of DVDs, the complaint alleges willful deception by pricing those digital copies at the same cost as physical media. That price point signals a familiarity, especially if you're a collector. It tells you, the customer, that you're paying for ownership. It's psychological manipulation, right? It's the same reason the price to rent a new movie is the same cost as a movie ticket. If you were to go on Amazon right now, you'd probably see the newest Superman movie available for you to rent at the cost of a movie ticket, right? It's meant to convince you that the experience you're purchasing is comparable. And it's exactly what Reingold argues violates California's new transparency law. Amazon, of course, points to the same term of use they've had for years, the line about limited licenses, the disclaimer that nobody reads, right? Their position is basically, we told you, it's not our fault you didn't read the fine print. But the lawsuit asks the obvious question: does that count as clear and conspicuous disclosure? Well, the way the law is currently written, no, it doesn't. California literally defines clear and conspicuous as language that stands out in bigger type, contrasting color, or a separate notice before purchase. Now, if you've ever actually bought a movie on Prime, you know none of that happens. It just says buy. The evidence isn't just legal citations, it's a lived reality. Consumers have already lost purchased movies when licenses expire. They've seen their library shrink without explanation. And unlike a rental, there's no expectation the movie will vanish. People are paying $20 to buy a title, expecting permanence and getting less security than a clearance bin DVD. Reingold's complaint ties this directly to the law's language. Consumers reasonably believe they're gaining the full bundle of sticks of ownership. In other words, the rights to keep, to use, to revisit. Instead, they're getting one stick, the right to watch, until Amazon says otherwise. Now, if the court sides with Reingold, Amazon could be forced to pay millions in damages, refund customers, and change their entire storefront. The buy button might not survive. They'd have to call it something like license, access, or something equally unsexy. And that won't just hit Amazon. Every digital storefront, Apple TV, Google Play, Vudu, they all rely on the same trick. If California sets this precedent, it could ripple nationwide. Tech companies would have to admit the truth. You don't own your digital library. You rent it indefinitely, subject to eviction. This isn't just about legal theory. It's about how we think about ownership in the streaming era. For the past 20 years, convenience sold us on the cloud. No shelves, no discs, no clutter, but now we're realizing the trade-off. Permanence. Netflix pulls shows. HBO Max deletes series. Amazon erases movies that you've already bought. And consumers are fighting back. Physical media sales are on the rise again. Criterion, Arrow, Vinegar Syndrome, all thriving. People want permanence back. And this lawsuit could be the lever that forces companies to stop pretending a license is ownership. Lisa Reingold's case isn't just one person versus Amazon. It's a battle over the definition of ownership itself. She says Amazon can't call something a purchase if it can vanish, and California law backs her up. If she wins, Amazon pays, but more importantly, the entire digital media industry has to stop lying about what buy really means, and maybe, just maybe, we'll finally get the clarity consumers have been demanding since Stop Killing Games put this issue on the map. Because right now, every time you click buy on Prime Video, you're not buying, you're licensing, you're renting in disguise. And if this lawsuit lands, Amazon may have to say that out loud. So, do you think this class action case has a chance of winning? Could this case change the digital ownership landscape? Let me know in the comments, and for more industry insights, check out this video right here.